Hello and welcome to the fourth and final installment of the overview of our training plans here for Champions Everywhere. If you've been following us patiently for the first three installments, then first of all, thank you for your patience. I hope it was informative, and I hope that at this stage you're pretty comfortable with how to use the plan. And if you are not currently a user of our plans, but you're considering the purchase, I hope you have a pretty good idea of the type of information that you will get. We have covered almost everything that is displayed, all of this information, except these two columns here on the right hand side called workload, relative effort. And I also want to talk a little bit towards the end of the call about the coach comments, and then I want to wrap up at the end by how do we then, how do you read the progression then to the next week, which you can see in this case here. So there's another week. And there's some things there that are interesting to look at, which will give you an idea of how we progress through the system and how it will look. Let's say if you have a plan that consists of 10 general weeks, 4 related weeks, 4 specific weeks, and then 2 weeks taper before the big race, like how would that look like? And what's the difference? But let's just start by continuing to talk about the same week that that has kind of followed us through these first 45 minutes and in the first 3 parts. So I hope at this stage that you're very familiar with the idea that you have paces, durations, distances, and even a subjective perceived effort available to you. But you're not meant to chase all of that, because as we said in the last column, that's probably one of the most important things I say in workshops that we do. You're not a machine. Right? And any coach who thinks he can predict how you feel even tomorrow is conceited beyond belief. It's not possible. We can only guess, we can only estimate. But based on tests that we do and all the information we collect from you, we can get pretty close. But really, a training plan is only a success if you look at it as something to play around with and something to say, well, today I actually feel a little bit better than I would have expected. So does that mean that maybe I could run a little bit faster? And we said in the previous call that yes, you can, because you have these perceived effort guidelines for you. So for instance, so you can see when I click that link, something happened here. You were taken to the website article that we have on rate of perceived effort. So you can see that rate of perceived effort is something is subjectively felt, which can be equated loosely to various physiological thresholds that are shown in this graph here, which is the intro picture. But much more important, it's to use it in a way that you understand what certain intensity should actually feel like, and you learn to trust your own body and your own judgment, so that you have confidence to make decisions based on the information you have, and you don't have to follow it like a slave, and completely mindlessly, or even, you could say unintelligently. But I know that none of you listening would fall into that category, of course. Just aside, most runners have a tendency to train, not strain, as Lydiard would say. So by providing all of these different numbers, we are trying to help you arrive at the right area, but it can still be used in the wrong way, right? As we said in the last call, if you chase 4:50 3-minute kilometer pace for your long run, even if that feels like an effort of 8 out of 10, when it should be feeling a 3 out of 10, then you're not using the plan correctly, because you're not looking at the full picture. As you can't, you have to have these multiple views of a workout to really see, well, if I have a bad day, doing that long run at 4:53 at any cost might be a really bad idea. So as we finished the last video by saying the most important column tells you what you should look for first, and generally in the early phases is heart rate and its subjective efforts. And we talked about perceived effort already. So what's the difference with relative effort? Well, relative effort is an earlier way of looking at subjective effort, which was pioneered by a Swedish coach called Gösta Holmer, and some of you might know him because he was the inventor of fartlek training or speed play training. In his system, it was actually it was based on mathematical percentages. So a 3/4 effort, and I can actually take you to a little slide which shows you can see here, this slide here is from one of our presentations called the Lydiard efforts. You can see it in Gösta Holmer's original blueprint. A 3/4 effort was roughly 5% slower than all out for the distance, it says here. That means that if you could run 10 kilometers in 40 minutes, if you run all out, then 3/4 effort would be about 5% slower than 40 minutes per kilometer. And that is one way we can use these efforts, and we do use them that way in time trials. And I'll talk about that in detail in the videos we'll have about the specific phase, and the videos we'll have specifically about relative effort, which will be a big one. I'm looking forward to that. But in this more general video, I just want to tell you that Lydiard, who was the main inspiration behind our training plans, he used these in a more subjective way. He didn't attribute a mathematical number to them as much. He instead said that 3/4 effort, for example, you should be able to do the run 2 days later if you do a 1/4 effort in between. About the 1/4 effort, he said, you should be able to do it again the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that, and the day after that. So the way that we always tell people to look at this is this little image here, and I'll talk more about that in the relative effort video as well, that a full effort is like knocking back a whole glass of water. That means you have to refill it, and that takes a bit of time. You have to go over to the sink, you have to fill the glass back up again. Whereas if you do half effort on a Saturday, you can still do half effort on a Sunday because you left half of the glass there for you. So in a way, the glass represents your relative energy levels. But when you've done 2 half efforts, you need to refill. In the case of a 1/4 effort, you can see you can just do it over and over and again because you're just sipping a 1/4 effort every day. I know that's a kind of an imperfect metaphor, but it kind of I hope it just helps get you thinking a little bit about what this means. But really what I want you to do if you're in doubt is click the link to the article about relative effort, which will be coming up in the next week's time, and read the descriptions that we have here, which will be in the article. So if it says, and let me just go back to the training plan here, if it says that for your workout it should feel like a 1/4 effort, if you then go to the description of 1/4 effort here, you can say it says you should be able to do it again the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. What that means is this, okay, that if you do a long run for 94 minutes, then that should be done a 1/4 effort, and that means if you had to go out and do 94 minutes again on Monday, you could do it, and you wouldn't really be much slower. It'd be roughly the same. And you could go out again and do it on Tuesday, and you could go out again and do it on Wednesday, and Thursday, and Friday. To me, this really helps understand just how easy that actually has to be in your body. And it forces us to think about not just what did I do today, I ran 94 minutes, but what did it do to me the next day? How did I feel the next day? If I honestly ask myself, could I go out and do that exact run again today? No problems, not pushing the heart rate any further. If the answer is no, then you know that the day before, whatever you did, it was probably a little bit more than 1/4 effort. And generally you will see that all recovery runs and easy runs are 1/4 effort. And so is the MAF test, which again is something we'll cover in a lot more detail, but there's a big article about it on our website, which you can just search on. And of course, Phil Maffetone, who is the inventor of the test, has a great website called MAF Fitness, where you can really delve into that topic if that's of interest to you. I'm going to skip past it here for the moment. But you'll notice that the out and back workout here on the Wednesday in this plan, which is kind of a signature Lydiard workout, has a perceived effort of 4 to 7. So that tells you that likely, on a scale of 1 to 10, for most of this run, you will feel somewhere between 4 and 7. And it's quite wide, that range, because there are many different reasons why it can feel hard. If you're muscularly weak, but you have good endurance in terms of your energy systems, that might be very, very tough. Even though it's not that stressful to the central parts of your system, but it's quite stressful on your legs and feels tough. Whereas if you have both of those abilities, you're quite strong in the legs and you also have a good energy system fitness, then the perceived effort would be lower. So we give a range there. because it won't be the same. And everyone, of course, has different pain thresholds as well, different tolerance for discomfort. If you're more stressed on any given day, generally perceived effort goes up, right? So if I take you out and I work you hard in the fields for 4 hours, and then I say, okay, now go do your out and back, it's probably going to feel like a 7. But if I give you, a lovely leisurely morning, the perfect, you sit with a newspaper over the table, sipping your tea or your coffee, it'll probably feel like a 4. So that's why that's never, except for the math test, it's never just a strict number. It's always a range. But you can see that for the out and back, we actually want you to go not by the perceived effort and not by the heart rate range here of 148 to 169. We want you first of all to try and dial in on relative effort. And that means, in this case, what's called half effort. And half effort, if we revisit again our little slide here, you can see means you should be able to do it again the next day. So that means if you go out and you do this exact session, now imagine this guy may be faster than you, he might be slower than you. So just for a minute, imagine this would be a steady workout for you. You do an out and back with 5 minutes of warm up and 5 minutes of cool down. That means for 60 minutes, you're going to be running at a relative effort of half effort. We are expecting you to be running somewhere between 449 minutes per kilometer and 428 minutes per kilometer. And we're expecting that'll probably feel like a perceived effort of 4 to 7, depending on the type of day you have, and it'll probably put your heart rate somewhere between 148 and 169. But the key is that if you ask yourself as you do this run, well, if I had to go out tomorrow and do the same run, could I do it without really pushing it harder? Ask yourself that question while you're doing the run, because that'll hold you back just that little bit that you need. What we sometimes do with people who find this difficult is we get them to run for 3 weeks in a row and out and back at half effort every day that they have scheduled for running. So if people have 7 days scheduled for running, they're actually doing 21 out and backs in a row. And this is something Lydiard advocated in his first book, Run to the Top. And it's a genius way of saying, well, are you really being honest with yourself that you could actually do it again next day? And it's half effort. It's not 3/4 effort, and it's not 7/8 effort. It's not full effort. Because the moment you tip over that, you notice, ooh, next day, I'm actually quite sore. I'm quite tired. So that's what relative effort means, and we'll dive into that a lot more in some coming videos, because it is a big topic and it deserves a little bit of attention if this wasn't enough. You can also see recovery runs are 1/8 effort because they're really, really easy. And you can see here this program has a 3/4 effort, which obviously means that you would have to take an easier run at 1/4 effort the next day in order to recover from that. You couldn't do a 3/4 effort run the next day and expect the same performance. You also have a workload column here, which is more of an information column. So you don't use that to actually do anything. It just tells you, well, in relation to the other workouts this week and the total load of the week, which you can see here at the bottom, 1,373, how much does this contribute? And it tells you, well, what workout this week is actually the toughest. Because it's not just about how long is the workout, it's also about how fast. So the way we calculate this is we take the average of the perceived effort and we multiply that with the expected duration. And that gives us then a workout. We also correct here for the warm-up and the cool-down element of it. So you can see the toughest workout of the week is actually the out and back, because it combines a good bit of distance with a good bit of speed. So it has a load of 352. That doesn't mean anything in itself, but it means if you compare it and you look at the long run, you can see, well, the long run actually should not be quite as stressful on the body as the out and back. The out and back is the toughest of the workouts. And you can also see the easy run and the recovery run are really gentle in this case, and they have a very, very low load compared to everything else. So to finish off, we have just under a minute before we have to wrap up. The final 2 parts of your plan is the workout details, which I talked about in the last call, and then there may be some specific comments from your coach out here in yellow, for instance, oh, this is your usual easy day, you can discard that. So in this case, the athlete doesn't always do this day here, the Thursday workout. As you progress through your training plan, all you need to do is simply keep moving down, and you will notice the goal of the week might change, and of course the workouts will change. If you have requested specific rest days, then they will show up as blank so that it doesn't confuse anything. But otherwise, things stay pretty much the same. Now, in the next calls, we will look at the different phases coming after related, but I hope this is enough to get you off to a good start.